Good morning and welcome to Construction World webinar series, Roads to Recovery. That's the topic today, and we have a panel that is leading the charge in road development in India. The first steps of lockdown, easing the lockdown were experienced yesterday. For once, people were not so upset when they heard the word traffic, because they said at least people are now moving out onto the road. Obviously, there are concerns, and a lot needs to be done in order to be able to get this into proper motion. But I think the first steps have been laid. I think everybody is trying to organize logistics, material, men, machines, and so on. So I think we are going to have a great discussion today as we go along. And let me introduce the panel to you. So we have Mr. Devendra Jain, Executive Director and CEO, Dilip Buildcon. We have Mr. Deepak Garg, Managing Director, SANY, South Asia and India, and Vice President, SANY Group. We have Mr. Hardik Agarwal, Executive Director, Dinesh Chandra R. Agarwal, Infracon. Mr. R.K. Pandey, Member Projects, National Highway Authority of India. Mr. Sandeep Garg, Managing Director and CEO, Wellspun Enterprises. And Mr. Sandeep Upadhyay, Managing Director, Infrastructure Advisory, Centrum Capital. Construction World is 22 years plus in running, a magazine that is the leading magazine in India. The readership goes across 800 cities in India, being the largest circulated. Our company also does social media management and digital services, and you can contact Priyanka at ASAP Info Global for that. Obviously, with the COVID, we have also offered our magazine on digital edition, free of cost for some time. So please utilize this offer. Please go to our website, constructionworld.in. So here's a infograph of the road construction over last 10 years. And of course, we managed to get the figures of total road construction up to Jan 2020, but not after that. So obviously there will be some additions for February, March as well. But yes, we have seen that 1920 has not been able to hold its own as compared to 1819. But progressively from 1314, obviously it's been up. We can see 1718 and then 1819. We the Bharatmala project, for which everyone is very, very hopeful and very, very excited, has terrific fund provision for phase 1, 5.35 trillion. A huge target lies before us. As you can see, the project period is still 22. We may have obviously some disturbance in the schedule with this COVID coming in now, but a very most promising kind of an infrastructure project that can drive our GDP growth. But we are constantly having delays, and I think that is another reason why our capital doesn't have the momentum. And of course, there are various reasons for it. No one particularly can be blamed, but that is the diversity and the complexity in India. And as you can see, the delays cost us, a much larger. In fact, all projects every year we are losing nearly 1 trillion rupees every year on account of delay of projects across the infrastructure space. So I have a poll question now for the audience before we begin our discussion. And all the audience can actually look at the panel that they have and vote for which is the most common factor delaying projects. Is it land acquisition? Is it lack of proper equipment? Is it financial problems? Is it untrained labor? Or is it lack of proper project management? Please select that one particular most picky such factor which is delaying our projects. and we will know the results in a few moments. So yeah, 54% feel that it is land acquisition, 26% feel it is lack of proper project management, and 19% feel it is financial problems. So land acquisition, of course, is the biggest one, and followed by lack of proper project management. I think that's interesting for the audience to bring about. Um, so here is the national infrastructure pipeline, which actually has given nearly 20 trillion rupees for the next 5 years amongst our infrastructure allotment. And we have roads is the second largest with nearly 19% of the total national infrastructure pipeline. So that therefore holds the greatest promise. Now let's go on to the questions. And the first question here, that we are restarting after COVID. Just before we start the questions, let me also introduce our sponsor. SANY is our presenting sponsor for this, and so our thanks to SANY for hosting this. So the first question is restarting after COVID-19, preparedness and logistics. So I'd like to take this question to Mr. Devendra Jain. Uh, Mr. Jain, what do you think? How's the preparedness? What is the logistic issue which is coming in the way of making better preparedness? Please unmute yourself, Mr. Jain. Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Pratap. In last 4 or 5 days, we are continuously connecting with the cement industry and steel industry. But I have seen one thing: they don't have any drivers and operators with their trucks, so they are unable to supply the cement and steel. They slowly they started the production on their factories, but the transportation is the biggest challenge. And to pick up the infrastructure, this whole supply chain management is the now biggest problem. The everywhere, I think in whole construction industry, everyone has the different type of inventory for the different days. So in the cement, we don't keep the inventory for more than 7 to 10 days, and steel we keep for 20 to 25 days, and diesel every day. And so the biggest challenge is the transporting management. Once they start the supply chain management, then only the construction activity will pick up. And the another biggest challenge is the labor and manpower, drivers and operators. During the COVID, the 40% strength is still on the projects, but their morale is very low due to this COVID situation. So once the transportation will open, once the trains will start it, so I think they will go to their homes one, and then they will come back. And the biggest problem is to pick up the further season is coming, the monsoon season. So the whole scenario for the infrastructure to restart is depends so many things. Now, how many red zones, how many orange zones will restart, how trains when we restart, the transportation will pick up. So I think the most important thing is that to start the transporting and supply management to pick up the construction activity.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Mr. Hardik, can you also add to this? What are your challenges you're facing? You've also begun your construction now already.
Right, definitely. Firstly, Mr. Today, I would like to wish everyone viewing this good health, and would like to thank all the frontline workers and extend our gratitude for all the good work they're doing, and extend support from the highway industry. Sir, as Mr. Jain very rightly said, supply chain has greatly been disrupted. But I think talking about the preparedness to restart the work would entail the industry to also ensure the safety and health of all the people that are working at site. So essentially, if a driver comes to our site now, we would not, we would prefer, like, we would make arrangements for them to have accommodation and meals right outside the camp, instead of allowing them to come inside the camp and interact with other members at the camp, because we would want to ensure everyone's health and safety. Similarly, we would prefer to request the government to allow interstate movement of labor, but after proper due diligent health checks to ensure that there is no transmission, there is no further transmission of the virus. And for these, I think the testing can be done by, the cost for the testing can be borne by the contractors and the concessionaires themselves. It is a rapid test. I think in a day or two, in I think 5 hours now, we can know the results, and in time we might be able to even know the results of the test sooner. So having the labor, allowing the labor to move through the state borders after proper check will allow not just the highway industry but also manufacturers to get the appropriate manpower and the drivers to get the appropriate transport capacity back on track.
Right. Thanks. Mr. Sandeep Garg, you're sitting in Mumbai, which is again a big hot zone in India. So what do you have to, how are you planning your restart?
I think most of the points have been covered by Mr. Deven Jain and Mr. Hardik Agarwal. Logistics and supply chain is a big challenge for sure, yes. And it is going to take time before we can restart. The other issue is that not only the labor which is at site currently, they have a tendency, they will have a tendency to go back to their homes as soon as the public transports are available. The other challenge is going to be that it is going to be very difficult for us to get back the workforce which has gone back home because of the fear that has been in their mind. The families' pressure are there. So I think the larger issue after the logistics would come to the manpower. It's going to take time before the business becomes business as usual, and by that time the industry would we would be seeing onset of monsoon. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that it is going to be a longish U recovery rather than V recovery for this industry for sure. At best a U, in worst case an L if you have another attack of a COVID when you restart. So that's something
what people are saying it's a W.
Yeah, it's a W, it's a L, or we don't know. I don't see a V recovery for the industry for sure. That's what my views are. Another point that I would want to make, Pratapji, is that certain states are also making some kind of stipulations that if you have an COVID-19 at your site, then the FIRs will be lodged against the owners of the company. Now, it would be a better thing to specify what precautions need to be taken by the employers, and only if they are found to be diligent and willfully negligent, that a penal action should be initiated. This is a risk that we cover for sure, we are willing to take. But any risk beyond that will be an unfair risk transfer to the industry, is my view.
Yeah, that's a good point of concern. May I bring Mr. Pandey now from National Highway Authority? Mr. Pandey, this priority, we want to know from you, what is the priority? Is it to accelerate the projects which are delayed, or is there thrust on awarding new projects?
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Patwari, before I come to the straight answer to your point, three important. Even before coming to this subject as a whole, my prayer to the Almighty that let us, let protect us from this rough weather, and at the same time, I request all of you to take care so that we'll, prevent the spread of this coronavirus. Coming to the effect of this on the road sector, of course, it has affected the entire, all the sector, but unfortunately for us, for the road sector, March and April is the peak season, not only in terms of the physical progress, but also in terms of the financial progress. Anyway, we took a lot of measures to make sure that our financial progress is not suffered, and particularly this point of time when the industry is looking for the cash. I can only tell you during this lockdown period, we made payment of around 10,000 crore. We try to ensure that whatever best we can do in terms of award and construction, we do it. But of course, it has been affected by this coronavirus. As you showed in the first slide, that the total construction was something around, up to the month of January. I can only update it by the end of March 31st. We have crossed 10,500. Of course, our trend of, increasing trend has been arrested because of the last 15 days. Otherwise, in last 15 days, we were expecting around 500-600 plus, and we would have crossed the construction figure of the last year. So anyway, there's no doubt in it. The projects have been affected due to Corona. Coming back to the issue on start. As far as NHI is concerned, we would like to maintain the tempo. For that, during this lockdown period, we have prepared a plan for award. At the same time, we would like to complete whatever projects, because when you see the target for NHI, it is always in terms of award as well as construction. So our priority to achieve construction as well as award. For both the on both the front, we have elaborate planning. But of course, the point is, it is very difficult for me to give a very concrete figure at this point of time when I am not sure about what will happen tomorrow. Nobody knows how long it will continue. But at the same time, given the situation, we are trying our best to push on both the fronts. Say, for example, we have got the permission to start the road construction work from 20th. And yesterday, when we reviewed around 300 and odd projects, 375 exactly, I don't remember, but it is something where 370 to 400 number of projects where work could start. Work started in around 250 plus. Again, the point of start, there are issues. One is about the logistics, as Mr. Jain said. Everybody has said about logistics. There is no doubt in it. But when you will go and talk to the cement industry, they were looking for a signal from the construction side that when they'll start, they will also start. And then question of transportation, all these things can be, because if you see the views of the government on this, they are giving some kind of relaxation every now and then in a phased manner. So if it requires a relaxation of movement of cement and steel, perhaps we can take it. The first point is, let us start work. Let the cement manufacturer start producing the cement. So this is the point on which, coming to the award side, we have a big chunk of Bharatmala. Bharatmala NHI is to cover around 28,000 kilometers of roads. So far, we have already awarded 12,000. We have in hand DPR for around 20,000 plus kilometer available with us. In the beginning of the this webinar, you raised a question about delays. There's no doubt in people said 54% is due to land acquisition. Our experience is majority of the projects have been delayed because of the land acquisition. So over last 2 years, we have changed our strategy. Now we are not awarding any work until and unless we have adequate land in our possession. When I'm saying in possession, land means the land belongs to Government of India and we are free to do work there. So with this change in strategy, if you see the even award figures of last 2-3 years, year before last, we have awarded only 2,300 kilometers. This year we have awarded 3,300 kilometers. So our first emphasis is to have readiness on our side, so that when the people come, they whole emphasis is from award has gone to quick completion of the project. So both the issues we are targeting for avoiding delay, land, until and unless we'll have the land, will not award the work.
So, Mr. Pandey, one follow-up question. You said 20,000 kilometers plus DPRs are available with you. So, what is the target for this year in terms of awarding?
I'll tell you again, as I told you, my targets are dictated by, say, for example, I have prepared a list of around 8,000 kilometers, where in terms of DPR, we have gone ahead and we are, we have formulated the project. Now, question is, I'll have to see the availability of the land. So this year we have kept a target of something between 4,500 to 8,000. We have not firmed up for a very simple reason, because of this period. It is not the construction industry alone. Our preparedness is also got a big jolt, because the entire state machinery is now held up in the enforcement and taking care of this unfortunate situation. So my land acquisition has taken a back seat. I don't know when the state machinery will be in a position to take up all those, but 4,500, we have reached a stage where I can comfortably assume that I can award. So this is the, most, if I go say the least which NHI can do is 4,500, and our preparedness apart from land acquisition is for around 7,500.
Mr. Pandey, on existing contracts, is there any clarity as far as force measure kind of clauses which people have been talking about? Is that anything? Is there any clarity on that?
I'll tell you, as far as force measure is concerned, Ministry of Finance already issued a direction that it's a force measure. Even in force measure, issue mainly relates whether it is political or non-political. When it comes to the budgetary supported project, it is not a big issue because it mainly relates to extension of time. But for the BOT project, it's an issue. Because if you go in terms of the BOT projects, there is a provision for giving compensation in terms of extension of time. So on this issue, because what had happened during this period, Government of India has given number of relaxation, some kind of moratorium, etc., etc. So this particular aspect is being, it is under active consideration in the ministry, and probably maybe another 10 days we will be in a position to firm up.
So basically, the tender terms itself, would they be subject to certain relaxations on account of this pandemic?
Yeah, of course, if it is required, because when it comes to the survival of the industry, then we have to, because even if you see in the past, we have deviated from the tender condition and brought out number of policy issues, which we felt that it is required to push the industry.
Right. Okay. May I now ask Sandeep Upadhyay to comment on the priority? Where is the valuation, Sandeep? I mean, where are the bankers, investors wanting to see what are they trying to put their funds into? I mean, where are they finding the hesitation?
Well, thanks, Pratap. First of all, good morning to all the viewers. I think when it comes to a challenging environment and an environment where you are constrained on the resources, I think you have to fire on all the cylinders. A bit of a smart work and hard work actually will go a long way. When I say smart work, the idea is to drive these stuck projects, and hard work, of course. I mean, we've just heard Mr. Pandey. There is a lot of thought process that is going on in terms of awarding the new set of projects. As far as the stuck projects goes, I'll just spend some time on it. I think from the investors' angle, it makes a lot of sense because these are projects which require some limited incremental capex. And I think these are projects which also come with limited construction risk, in the sense that any project which is 70-75% complete can possibly be completed in entirety in the next 8 to 10 months. The returns as well, I think, would be much better. These are disproportionate returns that we are talking of, much higher than the 15-16% returns that one expects while bidding for greenfield projects. So I think there's a good amount of element of interest which is there for stuck projects. We just need to get the model right, and model right with respect to the current environment. We have the likes of NIIF, which is our own sovereign first India sovereign fund. They could perhaps set up an SPV. Now I think NHA has also got an approval to execute projects through SPVs. They could possibly have an SPV formed for getting rid of some of these stuck projects. And NIIF also is a platform which has the mandate of acquiring assets, so it can be shoved into NIIF as the projects are curated, the stuck projects. And the other option, of course, is to monetize it through an InvIT or to sell it to a strategic as soon as the cash flows stabilize. On the greenfield projects, the investor sentiment is a bit bogged down right now. So for greenfield projects, I think the preferred model still continues to be the HAM and the EPC, and to back these kind of EPC players. But having said that, I think it is time also for us to think about iterating the mix a bit, adding an element of BOT. I think TOT is already there, because one has to also see the pressure that perhaps authorities like NHAI are under in terms of the means of finance. So we don't want that also to be distorted from a longer period of time, and hence BOT makes a lot of sense. I say this with a lot of caution. I mean, despite the subdued environment that we see in the market from an investor sentiment point of view, as long as the authority is a bit moderated in terms of their expectations of the premium that they will get in, or the IECV value when it comes to TOT, I think BOT gradually around 10 to 15% mix would not be a bad idea.
Okay. Now I would like to go to Mr. Deepak Garg. Deepak, can you tell us what is your preparedness in terms of machine deliveries? I think everything which, when it came to a halt, whether it was men, materials, machines, everything ground to a halt and froze. So now, how are you getting back? How are you getting your deliveries, supplies, etc. going?
I think we are actually, as a manufacturer for equipment, I think we are a very important part of this construction and infrastructure value chain. And most of the industry players, including us, we are quite well prepared in terms of the current levels of inventory. So if we look at earth moving equipment or lifting equipment, or even for piling equipment, the inventories have been built up in terms of finished goods by most of the manufacturers. So even we have most of the products available ex stock with us, and we are well prepared. Now the challenge again remains is on the logistics side. We are having, you can say, inventories which can support us for a month or so. Beyond that, we need to start the production. So we are prepared for 1 month in terms of finished goods. The challenge being again the logistics, what Jain Saab said and even others said, that the transportation driver availability is a challenge. We are facing that even now. So we need to see how the logistics can be ramped up. As regards the production of industrial units, we are severely affected on both sides. You can say upstream and downstream. Upstream, one is on the MSME side, where the small suppliers are there who manufacture components. So we need to ramp them up. So the industry is working hard with those guys, with MSME vendors, to start the supplies, because they have their own set of challenges in terms of raw material, again in terms of logistics. So that is what we are working on now, and hopefully we should be able to ramp up in 2 to 3 weeks time to see that the supplies for production in the industrial units can start. In industrial units, we have little lesser challenge in terms of the manpower migration, or you can say migrant manpower, because most of the industrial units employ local manpower for production purpose. Though for service and aftermarket support, we have complete manpower which is from the whole country, but mainly for the industrial units, we have local manpower, which should not be a very big challenge at this point of time. One very important factor coming in today is supporting the equipment which is starting up. So we need to see how again logistics for supplying parts and all needs to be ramped up. That may be a constraint for some time, but we are working with the logistic partners to see that the deliveries of parts to ramp up the sites can be started. So that's how industry preparedness in terms of equipment, we have fairly good amount of FG. The only challenge being now is that the cost of inputs has gone up drastically because of the dollar, which has gone up. So if you see Feb and March, the input cost has gone up drastically because the whole industry of construction equipment still imports hydraulics and many key parts from other countries. So we are little stressed on that because of the dollar that has affected the industry in a big way.
Thanks, Deepak. Mr. Pandey, what the impact as far as liquidity advances, these things are now really problematic for the industry. Is there any modification of terms that you are looking at whereby the industry is facilitated in terms of liquidity? I mean, the finance minister is supposed to announce some package for the industry as well, which is still awaited. But is NHAI also thinking along some lines like this?
I'll tell you, it is not because of this situation. Even in the past, if you see the history, there was an issue related to liquidity in terms of EPC and HAM projects. because of the payment terms included in the contract condition. So NHAI, depending upon the requirement, brought out number of relaxation and given number of circulars on this. Even further relaxation to it are under consideration, and it may come up. Further, to avoid disputes, if you read the newspaper, people say around 80,000 crore worth amount is under disputed. We have put in a very good system of conciliation in the NHAI, and during last 1.5 years, we have referred to them around 86 cases. Out of this 86 cases, 43 cases resolved. The amount of payout in terms of claim was around 8,000, counter claim was around 2,000, and it was settled for 3,500. Both the parties agreed. It is a kind of out of court settlement. So we are emphasizing on it. Still 33 cases are pending before the conciliation committee because 10 cases failed where we could not reach to the conclusion. During this lockdown period, we have assigned these cases to our officers to work out what offer we can give it to them, and in most of the cases, we have finalized our offer. So by resolving all these disputes, we are trying to pump in money in the industry.
Mr. Jain, what about bankers? Are they how are they moving in terms of fulfilling needs of the industry despite all the advisories which are coming from the center?
They are looking good now. All the bankers are very fast to give that RBI's COVID scheme and margin reduction in the working capital. So they are looking positive in this area.
I see. Mr. Hardik, would you like to also state any facilitation that you have seen from the banking community?
So, so there is some facilitation definitely, but I would say that there is a higher need because a lot of concessionaires go through interest during construction. This is a very significant part of the banking system for HAM projects and BOT projects. I think there needs to be a relaxation on that, and something that is very important for us to consider is that the tender terms itself, they mention that the repayment is based on the bank rate, while the banks charge the concessionaire on the MCLR. So the tender term should be amended to allow the concessionaires to be repaid on the MCLR as well. So I think that's something that a joint meeting with the bankers, the NHAI concessionaires, and the NHAI. These are some issues that could be resolved, and a very large chunk of the industry's issues could be solved by that.
Okay. Coming up next is our poll question, another one. What is most important for completing projects in time if land has been fully provided? Mr. Pandey already said that they're going with projects now with land full provision. So now what is the next most important? So please go ahead and vote now on the panel. We have over 750 people now currently on our 800. Yeah, I think around 800. So is it equipment availability? Is it project management? Is it trained labor, or is it location of site for completing projects in time? So project management obviously seems to be head and shoulders above everyone else, is the main reason, followed by equipment availability and trained labor as equal other elements. So yeah, that answers some again issues that we are talking about. So in Mr. Pandey, in arbitration again, like you were mentioning earlier, that mediation and reconciliation are better means, and you all have sorted out. But as we hear, is one aspect which I always mentioned was that why does the government naturally go into an appeal when an arbitration award is given in favor of a private party? I think it is something to do with legacy, but I think we need to reform this because arbitration judges are selected jointly, and therefore the whatever is the outcome should be accepted by both parties.
I'll tell you, even just see the figure which I told you, the kind of claims, 10,000 crores worth claims settled in 3,500.
Right.
It itself indicates that, there are issues. It is not always that NHI is at fault. Number two, to avoid all this, we have again gone back to the system of DRB, wherein I'm not saying we'll go for arbitration. The three panel of experts, they will be engaged from day one when the work is awarded. They will be at site irrespective of dispute. It is not that they'll come in picture when dispute is there. They will be going to the site every quarter or 6 months. They'll advise both the parties where dispute can arise, who is at fault, and the corrective measures to be taken. So it will create a kind of, the warning system that the party who is at fault is to improve. Otherwise, they will be in, they'll have to penalize. So this system, we have already selected number of arbitrator, DRB members. Even in the contract where agreements have been signed, we are requesting all the contractor and concessionaire, if they are willing to adopt this system, we are very much in for it.
Right. So there is one more issue, which actually it's a question raised by one of the audience, is that consultancies which contribute majorly to project management. Now we have seen that everybody feels that project management is one of the key issues in ensuring that the projects get completed in time, but somehow consultancies have been completely ignored, because in this whole space of construction, and there the cost of manpower is nearly 70-80% of their entire cost. So somehow they also need to be protected. They are also being crushed under this whole lockdown, and the need to come out of it. So I think somewhere some provision needs to be made to even ensure that they are viable.
No doubt in it. As far as consultancy is concerned, they are being paid on the basis of the rate quoted, and so far nobody has raised any issue on it.
No, correctly. No, I don't mean in terms of contracts with NHA. I meant generally, as the finance minister has said, some package for the industry is necessary for these consultancies to stay afloat. Also, they need some sort of an assistance, is what I think people are voicing. I need to now come to this question of finance, because I think a lot of questions are revolving around finance, and as the package is still awaited, I want to go to Sandeep Upadhyay. Sandeep, would you comment on what kind of, is the yield on toll? Now again, the toll has gone down, obviously, therefore the valuation of such assets which are toll bearing will get affected. Also, the debt relief needs to be accounted for. And in this environment, is there going to be possibility of investment by sovereign funds, which was launched in the budget?
Well, Pratap, if you see FY19 and also predominantly FY20, we've had a fairly good run, in terms of investments coming from the pension and sovereign fund. We have the who's who. We have the set of pension funds coming from Canada, from Australia, from Europe, from US. So there is a good amount of traction that we have built over the last 2 to 3 years as far as operational asset goes. The bigger concern that I have is around the greenfield projects. I don't think the appetite has really matured enough for these pension funds to take any kind of greenfield risk, and that is really concerning, because the mandate is for the authorities to do capex oriented greenfield kind of work, and that is where I see there is a lot of hesitation from the pension funds to step in. The COVID situation, you're right. I think there is a definite amount of downward correction that is bound to happen because of reduction in tariff. I think the multiples at which some of these toll projects were getting traded would get reduced. So, when we talk about valuations, I think these toll projects were trading at anywhere between 8 to 12 EV/EBITDA multiples. That will definitely come down. The annuity and the HAM projects, and in fact most of the projects which are now in the market, they are the HAM projects which are getting operational. I don't see much of a change there, because despite the COVID outbreak, while there is a downward correction on the traffic, the HAM projects actually don't get impacted. But the bigger concern for the industry is how do we get some of these matured patient capital investors to invest in the greenfield projects.
Okay. And I'd like Mr. Sandeep Garg to come in here. Mr. Garg, what are you finding in terms of the financial, sort of burden to be handled by various elements of equity and debt, as far as your experience is concerned?
So I think from a purely HAM player, there will be few things that I would want to talk about. Number one, as Hardik had earlier covered, the cost of finance is a substantial portion of the cost of being or a fixed cost being incurred by the HAM player. And if it is linked to MCLR, it rather than bank rate, the problem of banking system passing part of the bank rate reduction to the lenders and it being delayed would be addressed. So that will be a good thing to do. Another thing from my perspective is from a financing point of view is that on the HAM project, we have a requirement to continue to hold the project after COD for 2 years. Now, question is, as the liquidity is going to be a challenge for foreseeable time, and the risk capital is not available, pension funds are not willing to put in. There could be a case for consideration of earlier exit being allowed to the concessionaires after the COD is been achieved. So that will help the development much faster. Now,
Right.
in terms of the risks post completion and the money being patient available post the completion is there, but I think a long-term bond market in the maturing bond market would help both the bankers and the developers, because it will ease off certain challenges in the there'll be other tools to create the debt rather than the current banking system or NBFC system only available. So these are my views as far as the PPP HAM projects are concerned.
Okay. Another point which came up recently was about bank guarantees. So, there is some advisory that bank guarantees will not be invoked during this time. Mr. Pandey, would you like to comment on that?
No, as far as bank guarantees are concerned, yes, during this period it has to be extended. We are not invoking.
Okay. All right.
But coming to the question raised by Mr. Upadhyaya about the greenfield, I'll tell you 2-3 important aspects. If you see the way NHI is working, we started long back, 20 years back, when everything was on item rate. Then realizing a very big program of National Highway Development Project, we wholeheartedly switched over to BOT. BOT flopped sometime in 2011-12, and then again we came back to EPC, realizing that money is not adequate, funds are not available to take up such a big project. We introduced HAM. Then realizing that we'll have to, harness another sector, that pension fund, etc. So the people who cannot take the construction risk, we brought in TOT. As far as greenfield projects are concerned, because just think of Delhi, Mumbai. If one link is not complete, the whole link is, it's not continuously. So these projects are not the projects which can be offered on BOT. So we have option either to do a TPC or HAM. Now, question is, yes, it puts a lot of stress on funding of these projects, but that we are thinking of, again, there are a number of ways by which I'll develop on EPC and then go for TOT, or I'll take the SPV route or InvIT route. So we are working on it, and the whole idea is we are trying to harness in each and every sector depending upon his risk appetite.
Right. Hardik, would you like to comment on the finance availability and options? Yeah.
Right, sir. So I feel that in this time there is going to be a huge thrust on investment in technology for restarting work. And I think so, like now, social distancing or preparing for a next pandemic has become a very a significant part of the formula. So I think for a short term, there is a significant expectation of investment in technology such as thermal cameras, XYZ, combining that with highway traffic management systems, and a huge focus on that shall be implemented. Apart from that, as Sir has rightly mentioned, that sovereign funds, they require sovereign guarantees. And when we are in this environment where there is going to be a credit crunch from the banking side, I think the government should try and facilitate sovereign guarantees so that it's easier for sovereign funds to invest in Indian infrastructure projects. And because we are always giving a counter guarantee on the side to the government. So a facilitation of a sovereign guarantee to a concessionaire will solve a lot of issues and will attract much larger investment by sovereign funds and pension funds.
Right. So like you mentioned, Hardik, about technology, I think I would like to address this to the panel, that digitization obviously is now much more, in our face than ever before. All of us spending time working from home has at least taught us that technology has to be adopted. But, taking it further to sites, to our workplaces, to actually ensuring that we can do maximum with least. Is there some sort of a thing? So is there some sort of a thinking along these lines? So I wanted each of the panelists to comment. Let's start with Mr. Jain.
We are learning the digitization and everything in the industry, but in our construction industry, that's a very difficult to implement this digitization and the working, because our every project is working at the sites, and we require the labor, and we need the transportation. So it's a very time being arrangement, and we cannot rely permanently on this arrangement.
Anyone else would like to comment? Mr.
Yeah,
Sandeep Garg?
yeah, I think technology, it's a reality that the way the business is, it is going to change, and technology will come in play. It will not replace the manpower for sure. Yes, the manpower and the materials will always be there. I think where it will change primarily from where I look at it is the way do we do the project management, the way we assess the health of people, the way we do the manpower movement, the logistics, etc. All that will change, and the technologies are coming in play every minute as we speak. So we will have to adapt to it. And surely, I also believe that work from home is going to be a reality, at least for some period of time. Only the essentials will be allowed into the office. So we will have to learn to deal with these challenges. Especially in Bombay, I don't see that the offices will start at 100% capacity in the near future. So the adoption of technology is surely going to be there in the business.
Mr. Deepak Garg, would you like to comment? Technology
Yeah, I
being your
think
subject.
yes, I think on the digitalization, I would like to mention that earlier the trend was that we would have some internet connectivity or a GPS provided to some high volume equipment like excavators. But in these times, last 3 months, we as an organization, we have worked extensively on connecting the other low volume equipment also. So we have designed specialized connectivity for our piling rigs, for our cranes, which are not very high volume numbers, but then they are still very important part of the infra projects. So all these equipment we have taken up for connectivity. Our piling rig module has already started, which throws up a very good information about the application, about also the performance and the various parameters at site for like piling or for lifting, everything. So all these have been connected. So digitally connected machines is more and more coming up now. Second is, as Mr. Garg said, I think offline to online is going to be the way of life in future. We are already seeing it at our level. And I think down below, the teams also in every organization are working from home. I see there is no challenge in terms of travel today. So travel is not a challenge. We, even without traveling, we are able to connect. So I think this offline to online will be there in new era. Of course, the physical work at site or in industry still need to be done, and that part of the manpower or the functions have to still work at site. But on offline to online will be a big transformation for the industry going forward. This is, I think, something which is a big opportunity for the whole industry.
So, we have our next webinar day after tomorrow, which is talking about how the Asian cities are coping with COVID. And we have people from Australia, Jakarta, Singapore, and our own Pune and Smart Cities Mission. Also, we're presenting the Bhilwara case, which has managed to successfully bring down, so obviously India has to be at the forefront. And like Mr. Jain said, that our industry is a little, it's difficult to implement technology to that extent, but I think the steps will get taken as we move along. We have a lot of questions here, some of which I already took when we were, discussing different topics, and I added them to my questions as well. So I think one of them is that how how going forward, what is the time that the panel thinks that the logistics and supply chain would come to normal? So what is everyone's estimate of things getting back to normal is one concern everyone has. Hardik, what do you say?
I believe, sir, that it is just a matter of time when things get back to normal, but we must be very optimistic. I see that things will get back on track very soon. We all need to stand together, support each other, the industry, the government, and the main stakeholder is the public. So at the end of the day, things should happen in the mutual benefit of all three stakeholders. So a very important part for that is cooperation with health authorities of our industry, and allowing different resources for our industry to be given special movement status across the country. Because let's say without my expert project manager, who might be based at my head office at the remotest location of the country where my project is going on, it might not be able to pick up if that senior engineer or if that expert is not able to visit the site and make a call that will affect the rest of the project. So certain permission, certain relaxation is required, but with that and with ensuring proper health norms, we can all definitely look at things coming back to normal in a very smooth pattern very soon.
Mr. Pandey, what is your estimation in the government? How do you all see things getting back to normal so that the productivity is closer to 100% than what it is going to be now and for the next 2 months?
Today I'm in a position to only say on the basis of what happened last during 1.5 months. Today, the spread is somehow or the other contained. There are only hotspots where we'll have to take care. Even if I see the works where we got the permission, it appears that things will be improved quickly. But at the same time, I am foreseeing that monsoon will come over. So real business will be start after the monsoon. But starting up the work, giving orders, getting more requests about the relaxations, some kind of request from the industry where they need help. Of course, they'll pour in now, and we'll try to resolve those issues.
Mr. Pandey, one more thing. Since GST collections are going to be affected, is that going to affect the funding pipeline of NHAI or its projects?
When I was talking to you about the planning for our new works, it is not only the quantum of project which we'll have to award. We'll have to also decide how many will go to BOT, HAM, and EPC, and it is all dictated from the money available with us. So today there is no indication, but because budget is passed. But the point is, everybody knows that the country is facing a big economic problem now because of the lockdown. Things, not only GST, on number of fronts, tax collection will be less. Today, I'm not in a position to say so, but our whole idea is we'll try to accommodate by changing the mode of procurement.
So are we going to account for any safety and health expense in the contracts that we give out? Because now obviously contractors will have to provide for certain extra facilities in order to look after the health and safety of the workers. Would that be something that you all are thinking about?
I'll tell you, if you'll see, even the present contract, it talks about all labor laws. And in the labor laws, even it talks about you'll have to take care of all this kind of pandemic, epidemic, and all those. The second issue is when you'll see the kind of expenses in terms of providing sanitizer, soaps, and the mask, gloves. It is not a big, it's a very small component of the total project. But yes, of course, when we take into account all the social distancing, limiting number of people at work site and all those, then probably. But today we don't have any assessment of this kind.
Mr. Jain, do you think this is because you will obviously have lesser number of workers if you have to maintain social distancing, maybe the speed at which you can work may be slower. I mean, is that something that are you accounting for in your project planning?
It's rightly said, Mr. Pandey. The whole thing will be on the track after the monsoon. Till that, we are just hoping for the best. Things will good, and every day we can see the Aaj Tak channel or other channels. How many patients it increase or decrease. The rest we can hope for the best.
Yeah, so I think I'm getting a sense that by the time monsoon ends is when really we'll be on top of things. By then we would have already experienced all the logistic issues and worked around that.
Yeah.
Sandeep Upadhyay, any last words on when is the stock market feeling that this thing is likely to get over, because all our construction stocks will also then get some breather.
Well, the stock markets have never reacted rationally to to such kind of an activity which is like an unprecedented thing. But I think as soon as the situation in India stabilizes in terms of the number of counts, which looks like in the next 2 months, we should have more stability in the market also. On the with a word of caution that in the last week we have seen some good correction. Of course, the markets are down today because of the reaction to the tanking of the oil prices, but we may see a new low, and from there I think in the next 2 months, 3 months time, it should start to consolidate and firm up.
Deepak Garg, would you like to tell me whether this October BS4 guidelines, which are applicable now for construction equipment, is the industry all set for it?
The industry is actually preparing for this to implement on this timeline, but because of the COVID, I think there have been certain setbacks on the proto trials and also on implementation of the BS6 on the CV that is supposed to be implemented. So accordingly, the industry body has represented and requested the government, for which it is under consideration, but the result is still awaited. But as of today, the BS4 implementation on construction equipment vehicle is a tall task, because like we ourselves, we had some plans which we could not complete the trials based on that. So there could be a little delay in actual implementation. Now, whether the government allows that or not is a separate thing. But there could be a problem on that front, because we lost this time of around 2 to 3 months on our own proto trials. So that is a big issue. Only way I think is there are two things. One is the availability of these machines from October. Second is also on the cost. So there is likely to be an impact of around 15% on the pricing of 10 to 15% on the pricing of such CVs when we convert them to BS4. So these are the two impacts that we see. But I think as of now, there is a setback in terms of proto trials and rolling out the projects on time from October. So we will have to probably prepare some inventories to see that we sail through for at least 1 or 2 more months.
Okay, Mr. Sandeep Garg, your comments on the cement prices which are spiking?
I think the issue is once again of a supply chain. The cement factories have not started on time, and there is they are also dependent upon their own supply chain. So the issue is there's a scarcity and there is a demand and supply gap. The projects are starting, people are wanting to pick up the cement. It's a question of time. As we said, it should all settle down. However, it's important that all stakeholders in the development of the country play a part wherein it is collaborative and it is value accretive. Because if we as the last mile connection of infrastructure developer, we have to take the brunt of everything going northwise on the pricing, we will not be able to make our both ends meet. So I think it's only a matter of time. I don't think it will sustain. However, we will have to wait, watch and see, as Mr. Jain and Pandeyji said. The actual demand will only come in post the monsoon. It's only a small period of time that we will have to wait through.
So roads to recovery seems to be on the way, and post monsoon is when we can actually get back to being a proper healthy situation. So I must thank all of my panelists, Mr. R.K. Pandey, Mr. Deepak Garg, Mr. Hardik Agarwal, Mr. Devendra Jain, Mr. Sandeep Upadhyay, Mr. Sandeep Garg. Thank you very much for participating in this wonderful webinar. And thanks to our 800 attendees who have made this by participating in the polls, giving us good points of intervention and your questions. Thank you very much. And we look forward to having you again. Mr. Deepak Garg and SANY, thank you very much for sponsoring this. And we look forward to doing many more. Thank you and all the best, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Namaskar.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thank you.